because we have a busy the rest of the morning to complete. So, Emily, do you want to go and give them a hurry up? I'll give Emily 1 minute to be like an attack dog. So the final presenter in this morning's session and in the plenary talks is again, it's lovely to be able to say another old friend, but I seem to have lots of old friends. Well, old is not the right word with Roberto. Roberto is a friend of many years, and Roberto is one of these unique individuals who you will see during the course of his presentation, that he gives a very erudite discussion, almost exclusively with his own data, which is highly published. And when you start looking at having several Nature publications in the same year, it makes you think that this is a serious researcher. And Roberto has come from what is arguably one of the world's most potent breeding grounds for pediatric gastroenterologists and scientists, being Naples. The sort of the alumni from the Naples program is quite astounding, going back several generations, and it all starts from Stefano Guandolini, who was the chair in Naples, who went to Chicago. But then there's Roberto and Alessio Fasano, who's now the chief in Boston. We have Riccardo Tronconi and others, Alfredo Guarino, who have all been really at the forefront of pediatric gastroenterology and the understanding the science of that. And Roberto has, unlike all the other aforementioned names, has stayed in Naples, but has built the most amazing laboratory. And I've had the privilege of going through his laboratory on a couple of occasions, and it's an extraordinary sort of setup, and things can get done and can be done quickly in Naples. But Roberto is a pediatric gastroenterologist, and you see he's the chief of the Pediatric Allergy Program and Department of Translational Medicine, Science and Pediatrics. With that, I'd like to invite Roberto to the stage.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for this invitation. Also, thank you to organize to this invitation in this beautiful country. I'm very happy to be here, and I would like to present some new ideas in terms of an active treatment for this very common condition for our clinical practice, cow milk allergy. Everybody knows in this room that we are facing a changing scenario regarding the epidemiologic pattern of cow milk allergy and food allergy in general. But I guess that we can learn something that could have a good impact for our clinical practice. For example, we face an increased prevalence and persistence on severity of clinical manifestation. In Italy, for example, in my country, during the last 10 years, the number of children requiring hospitalization because food-induced anaphylaxis increased up to 400%. And I learned that in your country, in Indonesia, about 3-4% of babies presented with diarrhea are affected by cow milk allergy. It is impossible to explain such very fast-changing scenario by genetic factor. For sure, there are some factors in our environment that are influencing this changing scenario. These factors are acting on epigenetic modulation of our genes, and these are leading to an increased prevalence, severity, and persistence of the manifestation, and these are leading to an increased number of hospitalization and costs. Another important point that we have, if I have a child, if I have an infant today in my office, 6 months of age, affected by cow milk allergy, this baby will present an increased risk to develop other atopic manifestations later in the life, the so-called atopic march. About 50% of this baby will present asthma or ocular rhinitis later in their life, but we know now that these babies present an increased risk to develop also other immune and non-immune manifestations, such as IBD, EOE, or other conditions. So this baby could participate in a further increase in the number of hospitalization and costs also later in the life. But on the clinical point of view, in this baby, 6 months of age, today in our office, I'm facing the first sign, the first strong sign of a dysregulation of the immune system. And we know that food allergy derives from a defect, from a failure of immune tolerance mechanism. I'm a clinician, I'm a pediatrician. My first goal is to rehabilitate the immune system of this baby with the aim to stimulate immune tolerance. Immune tolerance is the suppression of immune response to dietary antigen that is mediated by these very important cells, the antigen-specific Tregs. And this network is modulated by two very important environmental factors. The first one is the microbiome structure and function. In particular, it's very important that this microbiome is able to produce the right amount of short-chain fatty acid, because these short-chain fatty acid, in particular butyrate, are very important in modulating the immune tolerance network. At the same time, it is important that this baby is receiving the right amount of peptides. If this information are good information, these information are delivered by the activity of the dendritic cells to mesenteric lymph nodes, and at this point is an activation of Tregs. And when Tregs are activated, we can observe a downregulation of a Th2-oriented response. It's important to underline this is a dynamic network. As pediatricians, we can modulate every day this network, selecting the diet factors, selecting the factors that are able to influence on microbiome structure and function. In fact, it's important to consider every day in our clinical practice that the diet of this baby is able to modulate the structure of microbiome and the function of microbiome, in modulating the expression of short-chain fatty acid, because at the end of the day, these are the players. These are the players able to modulate non-immune and immune mechanisms involved in immune tolerance. Non-immune means intestinal permeability, mucus thickness. Immune means the activation of Tregs or the modulation of many other cells that are involved in the immune tolerance network. Another important point for us as pediatricians that we are modulating the epigenome. We are modulating the expression of the genes. By modulating the microbiome structure, I can increase the production of short-chain fatty acid, and these are responsible for the modulation of all epigenetic mechanisms, histone deacetylase, DNA methylation, and macroRNAs. And these are responsible for a long-term modulation of Th1 or Th2-oriented response. This is very important, because I don't care about the modulation of anenterocytes. Everybody knows in this room that anenterocytes live 3 days, of eosinophils or basophils. These cells live 5 days. I'm facing an infant. And I like to modulate the entire life of this baby. I can do this, modulating the epigenome. So we are protected against allergy thanks to the activity of a healthy microbiome, because this healthy microbiome is able to produce the right amount of short-chain fatty acid, and I can have a beautiful gut barrier. You can see here the external mucous layer. This is the home of the bacteria. The internal layer is almost sterile, and the intestinal permeability, the gut barrier, and the lamina propria. In this case, I can have the right activation of Tregs, and when Tregs are activated, there is a huge production of anti-inflammatory and anti-allergic cytokines, such as IL-10, TGF-beta. I can be protected against allergy, against autoimmunity, against many chronic conditions, not only for the pediatric age. But if I have dysbiosis, I have a disruption of the gut barrier, as you can see here. At this point, there is an increased number of antigenic peptides that could cross the barrier and could activate a pure Th2-oriented response. At this point, I have an increased production of IL-4, IL-13, IL-5, the most important cytokines involved in the allergic response. Everybody knows this concept. At the end of the day, I have the allergic manifestation that we learned today thanks to the beautiful lecture of Neil. So it's very important for us, it's very important for us as pediatricians to preserve the gut microbiome structure and function, because if I have an alteration of gut microbiome, I have a state called dysbiosis, and this leads to another important problem, an alteration of the gut barrier, an increased permeability. And this leads to an alteration of the immune system, as explained before, with an increased risk to develop food allergy. And at this point, I have a dysregulation of an immune system that could lead to an increased risk to present later in the life other allergic manifestation of EOE. We know that if I have a baby affected by cow milk allergy, this baby presents 9 times more risk to develop EOE later in the life. Or other immune-related conditions, such as IBD. And we know that the immune system in the gut, the enteric nervous system in the gut are well connected, and this leads to an increased risk to develop GI dysfunction, GI dysmotility, with an increased risk to develop functional gastrointestinal disorders. A baby affected by a cow milk allergy in the first year of life presents an increased risk of 40% to develop later in the life functional gastrointestinal disorders. So it's another important point. And we know that the neurons in our gut are well in contact with the neurons in the brain, the so-called gut and brain axis. And this leads to an increased risk to develop other conditions, neuropsychiatric conditions, such as autism.